So you want to own a medieval tavern. You picture a timber hall glowing after dark, a fire in the hearth, travelers crowding the benches while silver pennies keep landing in your hand. Then you open one surviving travel account. 7 mounted travelers stop at an inn. 2p for beds and 10p for horse feed. The horses spend 5 times more than the men do on sleeping. That is the part the romantic version leaves out. Someone has to buy the hay, replace the missing linen, cover the spoiled drink, pay the servants, find the rent when the road goes quiet. We're going behind the counter and into the accounts. We'll open a large English roadside inn around 1450, follow the coins in and out, and see whether the owner could become rich. First, the name is slightly wrong. We call it a tavern because that is the word that survived. In late medieval England, the business you are imagining with a hall, kitchens, guest rooms, stables, fodder, storage, and overnight accommodation was more properly an inn. An ale house could be a room in someone's home. Tavern in the narrower medieval sense leaned more toward wine. Your place is bigger: a hotel, restaurant, stable yard, warehouse, meeting house, and credit desk around one courtyard. A useful model is the Angel Inn at Andover. Winchester College began building it in the middle of the 15th century, and an unusually good paper trail survives. Contracts, spending records, an inventory, rents, parts of the structure, and the names of several operators. Walk through the gateway, and the scale becomes obvious. The hall is about 30 feet by 20. A cart can pass through the entrance into a central yard. Stable ranges run along the sides with guest chambers above them. Behind the public rooms sit kitchens, parlors, cellars, ovens, latrines, mangers, racks, and a hay barn. Instructions suggest around 16 chambers with room for perhaps 50 or 60 people. This is not somebody's front room with a barrel in the corner. It is a transport business with beds upstairs. The location does most of the heavy lifting. A prosperous market town brings in traders, mules, livestock dealers, craftsmen, messengers, and people moving between larger towns. They arrive with different needs. One wants supper. Another wants a private chamber. A merchant needs his cloth kept dry. A servant needs somewhere cheap to sleep. 3. Anyone arriving on horseback brings another mouth to feed, and that mouth is not willing to wait until morning. The building is laid out to turn each need into a charge. The gate brings in the cart. The yard holds the horse. The stable creates a fodder bill. The hall sells food and drink. Upstairs, the bed adds another fee. Lockable rooms and cellars turn cargo into storage income. A traveler therefore enters as several customers at once. You can charge for his meal, his drink, his bed, his animal, his goods, occasionally the credit that keeps him spending after his cash runs short. That is what you are buying. A place on the road where tired people have fewer alternatives than they did 6 hours earlier. Before the first penny reaches your hand, though, someone has to build the place. Angel appears to have cost about £400 to construct. The carpentry contract alone came to 90. Those figures only look small because medieval money is written with familiar symbols. £1 held 240, so £400 meant 96,000 silver pennies. Now compare that with a working wage. The carpenter used in the inn historian's comparison earned about 5p a day. Divide 96,000 by 5 and you get 19,200 days of skilled labor. At roughly 260 working days a year, the building represented almost 74 years of one carpenter's wages. 1 in 74 working years. Fortunately for you, £400 probably is not your bill. Winchester College owns the property. It pays for the walls, timber, yard, and land. You come in as a tenant and rent the chance to make money inside them. That helps, but it does not mean you open cheaply. The landlord has bought an asset that can earn rent for decades. You still have to turn an empty building into a functioning inn by tomorrow morning. The guest rooms need frames, mattresses, sheets, blankets, and spares for everything that gets torn, stained, stolen, or worn thin. Needs tables, benches, cups, serving vessels, and cooking equipment. The stable needs straw, hay, oats, racks, tools, buckets, and room for tack. Then comes opening stock. You need malted grain, ale or beer, wine, bread, meat, fish, cheese, salt, candles, firewood, fodder before the first guest walks in. Some of it will spoil. Some will feed your own household. Some will quietly leave in a servant's apron or a traveler's bag. You also need cash that does nothing except sit there until something goes wrong. A merchant may ask to settle after market day. A regular customer may run an account. A supplier may refuse to unload without payment. On paper, you can be profitable and still find yourself unable to buy tomorrow's bread. That reserve is part of the business. So are the movable goods. The landlord can wait years for rent to repay his construction cost. You cannot wait years for a guest to clear his tab. Your money has to keep circling through barrels, bedding, fodder, wages, repairs, and credit, then return to the cash chest before the next set of bills arrives. Fixed charge arrive regardless. Early rent at the Angel was about £8 a year. That is 1,920, equal to roughly 384 carpenter days at 5 each. The annual rent alone represented about a year and a half of a skilled carpenter's cash wages, and rent has no interest in your excuses. Beds, a weak harvest, a washed-out road, a town fair that never happened. £8 is still £8. The grand building belongs to the college. What you acquire is the obligation to keep it full, stocked, heated, staffed, and paid for. You have to hire the people who make any of that possible. A large inn is not run by one cheerful owner standing behind a jug. It is run by a household, and usually a tired one. Your spouse may handle stores, accounts, brewing, food, servants, or all five. Children and relatives fetch water, clean rooms, carry dishes, and help when market day fills the yard. Living workers cook, tend horses, change bedding, haul fuel, watch the gate, and deal with guests who arrive long after everyone else has gone to bed. Family labor keeps the cash wage bill lower. That does not make the work free. The household receives food, clothing, lodging, and whatever income survives at the end of the year. A modern profit calculation can easily mistake unpaid family effort for a large operating margin. Outside labor still costs coin. Broad wage benchmarks put a male laborer at around 3p a day, near 15,400, and closer to 4p by 1500. Women often receive between half and 3/4 of male cash wages. Although servants' food, clothing, and accommodation make a neat comparison difficult, brewing adds another workload. Women performed much of England's ale production in earlier medieval communities. Although larger commercial businesses increasingly passed into the hands of better capitalized operators, somebody still has to malt, mash, heat, cool, ferment, move, store, serve the drink. The stable needs someone competent too. A careless hustler can waste oats, lose tack, mishandle an animal, or cause an argument worth more than a week of drink sales. Guests may accept a lumpy mattress. They will remember a valuable horse leaving your yard lame. Supply chain begins with grain, and grain touches almost everything. It becomes bread for the table, malt for ale or beer, oats for horses, and part of the cost of meat and livestock. A poor harvest therefore hits several lines at the same time. Bread costs more, drink costs more, fodder costs more, meat often follows. Fuel is another constant drain. The kitchen, brewhouse, hot water, hall, and winter rooms consume wood every day. Candles extend trading after dark, but they sit beside timber walls and dry straw. Linen wears thin, barrels leak, and floorboards need repair. Drink is perishable inventory, which is a polite way of saying that your money can turn sour in the cellar. Traditional unhopped ale does not keep especially well. Hopped beer became more common in England during the later 15th century and lasted longer, but it brought different suppliers and did not remove the risk of waste. Buy too much, and you pour profit away. Too little, and the busiest night of the month ends with customers walking elsewhere. Wine is harder to control. Shipping war, customs, quality, and merchant markups all affect the price before a jug reaches your table. Then come the small losses. Skimmed oats, broken cups, sheets, and customers who leave at dawn without paying. None is fatal alone. Together, they wear down the margin. By this point, you have fixed rent, a labor-heavy household, perishable stock, volatile grain prices, expensive fuel, fragile equipment, guests who occasionally leave with pieces of the business. It sounds dreadful. The reason people still wanted to run inns is that the revenue was much broader than the sign over the door suggested. Alley is the obvious sale. It is also the easiest one to overestimate. Most guests will buy a drink, but drink faces local competition, depends on grain, spoils, requires labor and vessels, and sits under public regulation. The jug gets all the attention because everyone can see it. The better business is scattered across the rest of the customer's stay. Food. Bread, meat, fish, cheese, page, and simple cooked meals turn stored provisions into repeated charges. A mounted party may include servants as well as masters, so one purse can pay for several mouths. Then there are the beds. A chamber can be sold again the next night. Several travelers may share a room and sometimes a bed. Once you own the frames and bedding and have somebody to clean them, an extra sleeper brings in money without requiring another wing on the building. But the more revealing income sits in the yard. Surviving expense account from 1331 gives us a useful clue. It is not an angel in price list, and it comes from an earlier period, so treat it as an order of magnitude comparison. 7 mounted travelers paid 4p for bread, 2 for beer, 1.25 for wine, 512 for meat, smaller amounts for pottage, candles, and fuel. Their beds cost 2p. Their horse fodder cost 10. The animal's food came close to the combined cost of the party's beer, wine, meat, and beds. It was 5 times the lodging charge on its own. From your side of the gate, that makes sense. 7 riders bring 7 animals. Each horse needs stable space, straw, hay, oats, water, and attention. You can buy fodder in bulk, keep it in the barn, and sell it in smaller portions to people whose horses cannot skip dinner because the price feels high. Stable is a second dining room. Its customers are bigger, less flexible, and very unlikely to order nothing. Now carry that across every market day. Two men may share a cheap chamber upstairs, while two horses eat a larger bill below them. A wealthy rider who barely touches the ale can still be one of your best customers because his animal keeps a dependable appetite. Cargo creates another income stream. Merchants need a gated yard, dry storage, cellar space, or a room where goods can be watched. Cloth has to stay out of the rain. Packs must be unloaded. Samples need somewhere to be shown. You already own the space in the gate, so security becomes something you can sell. Once merchants and goods gather in the same building, trade follows. Innkeepers appear in records, stock for resale, selling oats and horse bread, dealing in cloth, keeping livestock, and leasing land. The traffic passing through the property gives you a chance to hear about shortages, surplus stock, debtors, buyers, prices, and opportunities before much of the town does. A fish seller has surplus stock. A cloth merchant needs a local buyer. A farmer knows where oats are cheap. You stand in the middle of those conversations, feeding everyone involved. The inn also gives people a reliable meeting place. Strangers can inspect goods, negotiate over a meal, turn on the next market day. You provide the table, privacy, warmth, and a trusted address. Credit makes the relationship last beyond one visit. Some guests pay immediately. Others run an account. Letting a good customer settle later can keep him loyal and increase what he spends, especially when his own money will arrive only after market day. There is no tidy deposit account behind the bar, but you do become a local credit node. You know the customer's face, trade, goods, and likelihood of returning. That lets you take risks a stranger cannot. Sometimes those risks pay later. Some of them will hurt. Stack the income properly, and the business looks very different. Drink starts the bill. Food makes it larger. Beds earn from the night. Horses earn from the yard. Storage captures the cargo, captures the information moving through the building. Credit keeps the customer tied to you after he has left. A single traveler can generate half a dozen separate charges without buying very much ale at all. For a strong year reconstruction, assume around 15 travelers a day over 300 trading days plus local business. That gives roughly 88 in annual revenue. 88 equals 21,120. At 5 per carpenter day, the gross intake is worth more than 16 years of skilled day wages passing through one property in 12 months. Of course, most of that money does not stay with you. Gross revenue never does. But the scale explains why a successful innkeeper could use one busy yard as the base for a much larger fortune. The ale brings people through the gate. Their other needs are what make the property valuable. Insider Mechanism 1350 to 625. The Angel contains two businesses depending on which side of the lease you occupy. College owns the property. It spends about £400 building the complex and initially receives around £8 a year in rent. That works out to a gross yield of roughly 2% with a simple payback near 50 years before repairs, vacancies, or unpaid rent. At 10 a year, the gross yield reaches only 2.12%. The simple payback still approaches 40 years. The college is playing a slow game. It puts a large amount of capital into land and buildings, then waits decades for the rent roll to repay it. The tenant handles most of the daily volatility. You play the faster, more dangerous game. You avoid the £400 construction cost, but you provide the furniture, stock, labor, household effort, and working cash. You owe the fixed rent. In return, you keep the operating upside. It is a recognizable arrangement. Even now, the institution owns the property, and the operator takes the sleepless nights. The landlord's stability can be misleading. Written into a lease and rent collected were not always the same. Errors, remission, repair disputes, and weak tenants could stretch the payback further. Regulation limits what you can charge captive travelers. The size of bread and ale linked price, quantity, quality to grain conditions. Local allotters inspected drink and brought offenders before the courts. Frequent fines do not show that nobody cared. They show that enforcement was routine. Rules for hostelers also addressed excessive charges for provisions, including horse feed. That is a revealing detail. Authorities worried about fodder prices because mounted travelers had poor bargaining power. A horse cannot decide to eat in the next town tomorrow. The same problem appears in legal responsibility. By the later Middle Ages, English law had developed a distinct doctrine around innkeepers and property lost under their roof. You offer shelter and custody. When goods disappear, the guest may expect you to answer for them. Each revenue line comes with a matching headache. Beds mean cleaning and theft, bring animal liability. Storage makes you responsible for cargo. Credit creates bad debt. Drink brings inspections, fines, and arguments over measure and quality. Reputation is therefore part of the balance sheet, even though nobody writes a clean price beside it. Merchants return to the inn where their goods stay secure. Their accounts are remembered, their horses are handled properly, and private business remains private. Lose that trust and the building does not vanish. The good customers do. A capable operator survives by keeping records, watching servants, knowing customers, controlling stock, and spreading income across several lines. For a while, the business can look unusually durable. Then the traffic drops. Traffic is your oxygen. Rent keeps breathing without it. When the road is busy, fixed costs look manageable because many customers share them. When travel slows, the same costs sit on fewer transactions. The roof still leaks. The household still eats. Servants still need support. Fuel still burns. Quarter day still arrives. A bad harvest attacks from both sides. Grain, bread, ale, beer, oats, and livestock products all become more expensive. While ordinary customers have less money to spend, your costs rise as the market weakens. Full stable may not save the margin if every measure of oats costs far more, and local officials resist sharp price increases. Seasonality creates them on a smaller scale. Market days can fill the yard. The quiet weeks leave the same rooms, workers, and stores underused. Depends on the busy periods being strong enough to carry the empty ones. Fire is the bluntest danger. Your business is made from timber, open flames, candles, ovens, dry straw, hay, barrels, crowded rooms, and strangers who fall asleep exhausted. No modern insurer arriving a week later with enough money to rebuild. Andover had already learned that lesson. A major fire in 1434 left several town rents uncollectible and led to substantial tax relief. When Winchester College invested in the Angel soon afterward, would not have felt theoretical. A profitable property can stop earning because the town around it has burned. The rent records show a quieter failure too. One operator, Robert Cuss, built up arrears. 710 shillings remained unpaid years after his lease. That was nearly a full year of the Angel's early rent. Another tenant, John Waterman, faced a nominal rent of £10 that proved too high. The landlord eventually had to remit part of it. There is no dramatic collapse in those entries. No smash barrel, no midnight escape. Promise number never arrives. That is often how ruin appears in an archive. The lease says £10. The account records less. The missing amount is where the bad year lives. Credit can accelerate the slide. During a good season, tabs help you sell more. During a bad one, turn into money you cannot collect. The merchant who owes you may be dealing with unsold stock, dead animals, or his own failed harvest. Suppliers see the danger and shorten their terms. Customers still owe you from last month, while the people bringing grain, wine, fodder now want cash at the gate. That gap can kill a business that looks profitable on paper. You may sell assets to keep going, empty a barrel, sell livestock, pledge household goods. It buys time but leaves you weaker when trade returns. Busy week arrives and you have less stock, fewer betting, and no cash to take advantage of it. The basic problem is simple. Revenue moves with traffic. A large part of your cost base does not. You cannot return half the roof when half the guests disappear. You cannot stop feeding the household for a month. Spoiled provisions will not sell themselves back to the merchant at full price. Owning the inn is therefore a wager on movement. Travelers must keep coming. Horses must keep eating. Customers must settle their accounts before your own creditors lose patience. The annual numbers make that wager much easier to see. No complete annual operating statement survives for the Angel. The figures that follow are a reconstruction, not a lost medieval spreadsheet discovered in a chest. The model combines the documented rent, the historical traveler's spending basket, 15th century wage benchmarks, and stated assumptions about traffic and costs. In a strong year, you average 15 travelers a day across 300 trading days. Spending by those travelers brings in roughly 73. Local drink, food, meetings, and trade add around 15 more. Total revenue reaches about £88. Now the money starts leaving. Provisions and fodder take roughly £38. Rent takes 8. Hired labor takes 11. Fuel, repairs, and linen remove another 8. Spoilage, fines, and bad debt cost about 3. You finish with a cash surplus near 20. That is an excellent year. 20 equals £4,800. Against ordinary cash wages, it represents roughly 4 or 5 years of a laborer's income produced in one operating season. It is also 2 and 1/2 times the early annual rent on the Angel. With that surplus, you can buy stock in larger quantities, survive slow-paying customers, fix problems early, or move money into livestock and trade. Cash wins better terms, and better terms help you pull away from competitors living week to week. But 20 is not a modern net profit figure. It does not pay a full market wage to you, your spouse, or the relatives who work the inn. It ignores financing costs and exceptional disasters. Part of the surplus is compensation for an entire household's labor. An ordinary year is less exciting. At 10 travelers a day with business, revenue falls to about £59. After provisions, rent, hired help, fuel, repairs, linen, fines, and bad debt, perhaps 7 remains. £7 still matters. It can build inventory, support lending, buy livestock, or improve your position in the town. But it is not a thick cushion. A serious roof repair, a wave of bad debts, expensive grain season can consume most of it. Then cut traffic to 5 travelers a day and shorten the trading year. Revenue drops toward £25. Costs decline much more slowly. Rent remains 8. You cannot dismiss every worker. The building still needs fuel and repairs. Spoilage and bad debt may get worse rather than better. The result is a cash loss of around £13. One bad year can erase much of a good one. A fall of roughly 2-3 in traveler traffic turns a highly attractive operation into a business borrowing to keep the doors open. So who gets rich? Usually, it is not the innkeeper with the finest ale. The strongest operators use the inn to acquire other assets. Richard Kingsmill, an innkeeper at Basingstoke, shows the pattern. He sold horsebread and oats, dealt in cloth, owned at least 200 sheep, and leased a manor. He became town bailiff, received the town's highest goods assessment in 1481, served as a justice of the peace, and entered parliament. He did not become powerful by pouring more drinks than everyone else. The end gave him traffic, customers, information, and deal flow. He turned those advantages into cloth, livestock, land, and office. That is the route to wealth. Secure a busy location, keep the rent survivable, control the stable and fodder supply, and lend only to people likely to repay. Then move the surplus into assets that do not depend on tomorrow night's occupancy. Could you become rich owning a medieval inn? Yes, but the inn is only the starting point. Run it as a drinking room, and you may earn a living. Run it as a transport, storage, trading, credit business, and it can open the door to a fortune. Misjudge rent, traffic, grain, labor, or debt, and your name may survive as a line in the landlord's errors' account. The medieval inn earned money from everything the road had made difficult. A traveler needed supper, warmth, a bed, fodder, security, storage, service, and sometimes a little trust until his next payment arrived. By the time he reached your gate, shopping around had become expensive in time, effort, and risk. The landlord owned the timber and land. You carried the operating risk. Your profit sat in the space between the fixed rent and the dozens of small charges you could collect from every person, animal, and bundle of goods entering the yard. On a busy road in a good year, that space could lift an innkeeper into livestock, property, public office, and influence. Year it filled with spoiled grain, unpaid tabs, empty rooms, and rent that still came due. You thought you were opening a pub. What you were really opening was a market built around distance, a place that charged for the problems created by travel, cargo, animals, fall. The ale got the traveler through the door.